Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
Conrad, I'm great. It's good to see you and your smiling cherub face. I'm good, though. I have my return visit to the, I started to say the gynecologist, but I didn't go to the gynecologist. I went next door to the oncologist, and he was so pleased with my progress on my cancer that our next appointment is in 6 months, just to check in. I think he likes to hear my stories and me bullshitting as much as anything, but he was very, very pleased with how this thing is healing. It's still tender, but you know, I got new skin down there. My ankle's like a little baby's ankle. So in any event, that was good news today. You're still cancer free, and you're good enough to let's wait 6 months and check you out. He said, I'm doing that just for precautionary. He said, I don't expect anything bad to be there in 6 months. So I'm happy about that. That was good news today. I like that.
Man, that's exciting. So glad to hear the good news. And it looks like there's a lot of good news on the AEW front. Dynamite's in the rearview mirror, but this Friday night, we got a big Rampage, Saturday's Fan Fest. And right, man, this Sunday, it's got a big fight feel. AEW is back on pay-per-view.
You know, you and I both are salesmen, and I think we're both consummate salesmen and marketers. It's easy to get caught up on our own bullshit when you're talking about something you're trying to sell, whether it's a loan or a subscription to the ad-free network or whatever it may be. But I am genuinely excited about this Sunday on pay-per-view. If you look at this card very closely, you see several matches on the card where you can envision 2 or 3 things that are gut cinches. One, the talent are going to be lobbying with Tony Khan for more time. Each and every one of them is going to need more time. And they all have the chance to steal the show. All they're great workers. And that's the one thing about this roster. It's pretty damn good, but you know, you don't know exactly what to expect from like a Jericho and Eddie match. And those are the 2 kind of guys who will slip in the back door and take the show. Then you got the title match, the 2 Adams, which I don't like. I don't like saying first name of guys against each other. But that's just me. That's an old school deal. You rarely would see that back in the old days.
Yeah.
It's like having 2 guys wearing black tights. Won't ever happen in an old school territory. They had to have contrast. But man, you look at this card, Conrad, and you know, we could all say, well, I like that match, like this one. There's like 5 matches that are main event level matches that we're going to see on Sunday night. So I'm excited about it. Plus for me, it's one of those rare occasions where I don't have to go to the airport this week.
I love that.
Oh, love it, man. The TSA thing is it's not bad, but and flying out of Jacksonville is never horrible, quite frankly. It's better than most places
a nice airport for sure.
Yeah. I flew out of anybody flying out of LaGuardia on Delta, you're going to go in the new Terminal D as in dog. I hope you have walking shoes on. For the last 2 trips out of there, I've been at gate D98.
Oh, God.
That's the last gate. And it's somebody told me it was almost a mile. So I'm too damn lazy. That's too long to walk to your gate. God dang. So, but anyway, it's going to be a good week travel wise. I think the card's going to be really good. I know you'll be watching because you like those big shows.
Yeah.
Big show feel things where it feels like a big sporting event. And I think we have a card that can kind of do that for you.
Yeah, let's run through it real fast. I know you're calling it, so we're not going to make predictions, but Jade Cargill is going to be taking on Ty Conti. We got Andrade El Idolo, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy taking on Sammy Guevara, Sting, and Darby Allin. The Jurassic Express will be in there with Red Dragon and another team. It's a 3-way tag team match for the tag straps. Bryan Danielson will be taking on John Moxley. Chris Jericho's in there with Eddie Kingston. Wardlow versus Keith Lee versus Powerhouse Hobbs versus Ricky Starks versus Orange Cassidy versus one other guy in a Face of the Revolution ladder match for a future TNT championship shot. We've got Britt Baker defending her strap against Thunder Rosa. MJF will be in there with CM Punk. And then the Adams family for the world title. Adam Page versus Adam Cole, baby. Pretty loaded card. And there's been lots of discussion about AEW this week, but we're recording it before Wednesday. So by now the news is out, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more next week. But we hope everybody tunes into JR this Friday night, but certainly this Sunday on pay-per-view. I'm fired up, man. This should be a fun show. The big fight feel is upon us.
Oh, tune in Friday night to see JR because I'm only on Wednesday.
Oh, well, I assume they'd have some sort of package for the pay-per-view. Maybe
they might. I did a bunch of interviews for it. I was very outspoken, which probably get me in trouble. But everything I said, I thought was logical. But, when you don't know the storylines and you don't know where not to go, which is the most important thing of all, you go where your instincts take you and try to tell compelling stories that are interesting and thought-provoking, whereas I will buy the pay-per-view based on what I heard. They sold me. So it's like when you're running that card down, God dang, man, we got the Adams family match. Where's Morticia going to be? Well, she was sexy back when I was about 12. Morticia Adams. But all those matches are like, God damn, man. And that's fun for an announcer. And it's more challenging for the talent. I wonder who's going to follow who. That's another thing that you got to follow political.
Punk and MJF in a dog collar match feels like that's right up your alley. Dog collar is old school, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing the tape of 83 of Piper and Valentine because I had never heard of a dog collar match until they had it, which I thought that was kind of cool. There was no precedent for me to have a preconceived notion of what it's going to look like. And I thought that was a hell of an idea. But then when I saw it, you always wonder, well, they got this crazy stipulation. Can they pull it off?
Yes.
Can they execute within the bounds of the structure here that's been given these guys? And shit, fire. When Piper bladed his ear, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
I was shocked, and I was in the business. I just thought it was just phenomenal. So, and I'm sure that both the students of the game that we both know, Conrad, that CM Punk and MJF are.
Yes.
A lot of initials there, by the way. They'll study that match. They'll study anything they can to find one spot, one transition spot, wherever it may be. And I think that's just great. So they'll do a good job. And I think this match was Punk's idea.
I think this is only the second dog collar match in AEW history. I think Luke Harper did it with Cody Rhodes, and I think that was the last one. But I know I've seen Punk and Raven in a Ring of Honor dog collar match before, and it's not a common stipulation. But man, because of that, I'm pretty excited about it. I'll be watching on pay-per-view this weekend for sure.
Attaboy. Contribute to my retirement plan.
Yeah, because you get a pay-per-view cut, right? I mean, you're like a UFC guy.
Yeah, I wish. No, I'm not. I don't have that deal, but nonetheless, I have a good deal, but I don't have that deal.
Barry, if you're listening, let's get JR a pay-per-view push.
Yeah, come on. Everybody needs a push, for God's sakes. So anyway, today's show should be fun. Interesting time back. You know, we've gotten so much feedback. Our shows have done extremely well when talking about Sting lately.
Yeah.
People like to hear stories about Sting and all that, and how no matter how pitiful his creative that was handed to him was, he's still around today. He's in a 6-man tag, as you mentioned, at the pay-per-view.
He made it work in a big way, and we know he's going to this weekend. But let's talk about 1991. Of course, as we ease into 91 or 90s in the rearview mirror, and we just covered that last year here in the archives. Where do you think Sting's mindset was, his mentality was, when he's had this run that, while we did spike a couple of ratings, it's probably not peak creative running around with the Black Scorpion, and we haven't necessarily sold a ton of tickets. When the belt comes off of him in January of 91 and it goes back to Flair, how did he take that? Do you think he took that as a failure, or was it a learning experience? Or take us inside of his head as far as you remember.
I don't know how it couldn't have been somewhat of a disappointment that falls under the category of failure, because his false starts and his injuries, and things of that nature. But I think he was probably very disappointed that his character had not gotten over to the level where it was undisputable he needed to be the guy. It just didn't work. But I never heard him publicly complain. I never heard him, the dressing room lawyer shit in the locker room and all that, the negativity that some talents have the ability to spread. They don't realize it hurts the whole locker room, not just themselves, and their little feelings got hurt. He never was there. He was always a class act in that regard. And a lot of guys, Conrad, would not have been.
So as a reminder, we know that he's going to go right from dropping the title to Wrestle War 1991. And this is where we see Sting team up with Brian Pillman and the Steiners to take on the Horsemen, which is Flair, Barry Windham, Sid Vicious, and Larry Zbyszko. Arn's out, he's hurt, so Larry Zbyszko gets the nod. But I think this is the first time we would see WarGames take place outside of a Great American Bash show, which was certainly a Dusty creation. Do you think here at Wrestle War 91, and again, just to give everyone the context, I think that name was probably set in place before there was the whole Persian Gulf situation.
Right.
But still, on the heels of that, now we've got a WarGames match. Was this the first time you remember there being like a gimmick pay-per-view for the sake of it being a gimmick pay-per-view? I know TNA would do a whole card filled with cage matches. And these days, WWE has a WarGames NXT thing, but they also have the Elimination Chamber thing, and they have a Money in the Bank ladder match, not like when they need one, but now we have an event named that. It just feels like this may have been the first time. No, we're going to build a whole pay-per-view around this. Whether we have a storyline that gets us there or not is irrelevant. This quote unquote gimmick match is over. Let's put it on pay-per-view.
Well, the WarGames concept had been, and of course the data is there to back it up or disclaim what I'm saying, but I think it had a pretty good track record. I think it was one of the attractions that we had in WCW on pay-per-view that people seemed to look forward to. It was loaded with stars. It was loaded with blood. It had a unique little concept. The babyface always lost a coin toss, so they were at a man disadvantage to get go. But I always thought it was a good concept, and it seemed to have legs. And I think that's what they were banking on, is that it had enough legs that it could be a theme. And I didn't disagree with that. You got this one here was, and it was a unique group. Zbyszko being added to do Arn's work. Not that Larry could replace Arn. I don't know if anybody could. And then Rick worked extra hard because Sid was great attraction, but Sid was not the day-to-day 9-inning player. Barry, yes. Rick, yes. And Zbyszko probably was a little bit underrated. But nonetheless, I like the idea, Conrad. I thought we didn't have a lot to hang our hat on. So you hope that the WarGames title will compensate for that. That makes any sense. Hey, folks, it's time to take your podcast game to the next level. And you certainly want to get your almighty push. My God, we have to have a push, right? We'll get that over at adfreeshows.com. Now, I'm telling you, if you're a fan of Grilling JR, adfreeshows.com has the entire episode library, and it's got no ads. 0 ads, zilch, none. Ad-free and on video starting at just $9. Did you hear what I said? $9. You spend more than that at Starbucks, for God's sakes. 2 mornings. But that's not all, folks. We got tons of bonus content, including my after-hours roundtable, where drinking was involved with Eric and Tony. You simply will not find a better value in all of wrestling. Hey, look, don't make me go red ass, because by God, you know I will. Hurry over to adfreeshows.com right now and sign up. And I thank you.
So, in hindsight, obviously it's a different time, it's a different era, and we've heard different schools of thought. I heard sometimes people would say, hey, we should advocate title changes on house shows and live events, because if it never happens, then what's the need to rush out there? You can advertise it as a title match, but fans know nothing's going to happen. But then here we see Flair beat Sting at a house show for the world title. In that era, should it have been saved for a Clash or a pay-per-view or TV? Or could you argue the other way that, hey, it's good for live event business?
Well, you can argue the other way. And probably at one point in my career, I would have. I think at that point in time, we needed ratings.
Yeah.
We needed hits. So I would say, just based on timing and the lay of the land, probably would have been better off to happen on television. That's my take on it. And after all these years now, being able to look back on it, seemed like that would make the most sense.
I also want to mention that Sting, while he may be losing the title here, it doesn't necessarily mean that the company has lost confidence in him. And I get why anybody in his position might feel that way. But it feels like to me, there may have been more money in Sting chasing Flair. For years and years, the NWA was essentially, ran by a touring NWA heel champion, especially in the Flair years. And even in the Harley years. But the WWF was more of a quote unquote babyface territory. We needed to be Bruno or Hogan or Warrior. So I guess you could argue, hey, if Sting's still working in the main events and he's still selling a bunch of merch, does it really matter that he doesn't have the belt?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I really don't. Because we had fumbled that belt switch title reign embarrassingly. And I understand part of that reason was, Sting got hurt his knee, patella tendon, the kneecap was shot, and had to have surgery on that piece of business. So, but he was over. But I think you're right. Fans wanted to see Sting succeed, and him getting a nice rub at the house shows, working the main events. If he's in tags, he takes the fall, that kind of thing. Seemed to start working out decently. But from the standpoint of disappointment and frustration, that's a personal thing with Steve Borden. He had to live with himself that this thing just didn't work. And here's what the cruel irony of that is. It didn't work, but everybody knew that it should and could work.
Yes.
Let's get all the pieces together, put it back into place, and start a plan. If it takes us a year, but we have a destination that we're going to. We know on this date at this pay-per-view, Sting is going to become the champion. And the smart money might have been, you want him to become the champion at the end of the day against Flair. But until then, while you're rebuilding Sting with a succession of wins and getting him away from the Horsemen exclusively, Flair could have been working with other people, helping give other guys a rub and making other guys feel like a star. But that might have been thinking too deeply. I'm not sure.
Well, the first challenger for Flair is not going to be Sting. It's going to be Scott Steiner. And boy,
See,
Scott.
I like that.
Yes.
That sounds good, right?
It sounds great. I mean, everybody knew Scott Steiner had all the tools to be a top guy. One of the most jacked up, physically impressive guys on the roster. Arguably had the hottest move in the whole business with Frankensteiner. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But for whatever reason, the match didn't click. Scott has contended for all these years that he felt like Flair sandbagged him. And a lot of people in the newsletters at the time said the same thing. And I know today's episode's about Sting. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. But at Clash of the Champions, we see Sting and Luger team up to take on Doom, and Dan Spivey is going to interfere. And he's going to attack Luger before Butcher Reed throws Sting over the top rope for the DQ. But somehow we wind up with Dan Spivey and Lex Luger in a situation here. I don't know that that's what I would have picked for either one of those guys in hindsight.
Me neither. Neither one were ready for that role. Like I said, Dan Spivey never really found his creative home until he became Waylon Mercy. When Dan Spivey became Waylon Mercy, he became special. And he was booked haphazardly, skyscrapers, this partner, that partner, whatever. And, Dan was always reliable as hell. I think the wrestling business needed more Dan Spiveys in it. But the way that he was being booked was never going to get into the promised land. So, yeah, I like Dan's work, but boy, the Waylon Mercy character, I said it here on the show, is one of my favorite personas that I work with. I just enjoyed the hell out of it. Those vignettes they produced on him were just, I still think about them. They're really good, really good.
I want to mention this whole Luger Sting thing becomes a bit of a thing as a tag team, because we would see them take on Sid Vicious and Stan Hansen at the Omni, and then take on Flair and Sid in both Philadelphia and Baltimore. As a kid, I absolutely loved the pairing of Luger and Sting. As someone on the inside of the business, what do you think of that? Was it too much of the good stuff? Would we have gotten more mileage in building a card if we had these over baby faces in different situations? Or was there something wrestling fans always want new? Is this the way we get a new coat of paint on these guys, putting them together?
I think it rejuvenates both guys a little bit. It was great artwork for a poster or for a graphic. Lex and Sting, they were young and vibrant, great physiques. So there are a lot of positives to that situation. Without somebody starting already think out there in Grill and JR land that, yeah, but could they work? Well, sometimes working is extremely important, obviously. Hello. But it's not the only thing. If they were great workers and they were obese slobs, then what do you got?
Yeah.
You got two pretty good workers that are obese slobs. I don't want to watch that. That's like watching ugly women. I just think that it's a visual business, television business. And people ought to be pleased visually. And Luger and Sting, for the kids out there, Sting's face paint and their big muscles and their tans and all that. The women loved them. So I thought it was, here's what I'd say. I'd ask you this, Conrad, in response. Why not? Why not try it? Are we doing something better? Are we holding off something guaranteed to be better? No. Is this newer? Yes. Are you featuring two of your top earners and top paid guys? Absolutely. So why not?
So let's also mention that even though maybe that title run wasn't what anyone hoped it was for Sting, Sting winds up being presented the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Award for Wrestler of the Year and Inspirational Wrestler of the Year by Bill Apter. And I know people look at that sometimes and they say, oh, the PWI awards. But buddy, back in 91, that was a pretty cool deal. I mean, their distribution was major. And that meant that your top guy is going to be on the cover of that magazine. Right. That's a great thing, not only for Sting, but the promotion, right?
Yeah, good PR, good merchandising, good marketing. A lot of wins there in those awards because they were looked at, like you said, entirely different then as they are now. I mean, every website's got an award edition, it seems like.
Yeah.
Meltzer's been doing his awards edition for probably 30 years. And a lot of people follow his lead in that world. So consequently, there's awards are, I don't want to say a dime a dozen because that's disparaging, but you can get a little overkill on the rest of the year and all that stuff. And I never did understand what the criteria was to earn that distinction. But in any event, Sting getting those 2 awards on a very challenging year for him as a professional was very, very well timed.
So let's talk about very briefly, because I know we've covered it in our archives, the WarGames match at Wrestle War 91. We did talk about last year. Go out of your way to check it out. It's Flair, Zbyszko, Sid Vicious, and Barry Windham taking on Sting, Pillman, and the Steiner brothers. Meltzer would say it's one of the best matches he's ever seen live. He called it 22 minutes of solid mayhem with the crowd on its feet screaming from the opening of the action. He gave it 5 stars.
Wow.
So go out of your way to see it. We covered it last year in the archives. You can hear us talk all about it. But if you're going to watch one of Sting's matches from 91, this is a big spot to watch.
Yeah, that's the one to see. And the other thing too about that, you pointed it out, the other guys had a pretty good night too.
Yes.
The other fellas in there, because you get a guy like, Barry was kind of the same spot that Sting was. Was he going to be fish? Is he going to be foul? Is he going to be a star? Is he going to be on top of the card, semi-main, whatever? Sid was that big main eventer that they kept waiting to happen. Then you get a guy like Larry Zbyszko, who had been a top star and a main event level talent, but it hadn't been lately. So he gets a chance to kind of rejuvenate what he's doing and give those in charge the opportunity to see him that he can still produce. So there are a lot of small little battles being waged in this match. But and Sting, like you said, he had a great night. He had a really good night. But he wasn't the only one that had a good night, which makes it even more of a reason to go back and watch this match. That match is badass, no doubt.
Speaking of badass, coming out of this, there's talk in the Observer that they're going to try to put together Sting and Great Muta for an upcoming New Japan show. And I just can't help but think when we're looking all around in 1990 for a big opponent for Sting, it was right there.
Yeah.
Great Muta.
Amen. My thoughts on that deal. I was the crazy bastard, went to a booking committee one time meeting and suggested we put the NWA title where it was called NWA, WCW, whatever, on Muta. And that was looked at like I might as well have been some sort of dissident, some political dissident or something. But I kind of got over December 7th, 1941. How long can we hate the Asian people? It's like somebody said, I saw online the other day, maybe this week, that when will the resurgence of the pro wrestling Russian villains rear their head?
I hope not anytime soon.
Me too.
Golly.
That's, I know that our business is known for doing things that are distasteful and not real wise or thought out. That would be one of the situations. I would not want to be the booker that created a Russian. I could, the closest thing we get, the closest thing in the business right now is Miro. We haven't seen him in a while. He's still under contract. I'm sure he'll be back soon, I hope. But, the Eastern European guys, because most Americans who are a major part of our audience ain't got a clue who would that entail? Eastern European. What countries does that entail? Well, I don't know. So in any event, it was interesting. But I like Muta, and you're right, Con. Sometimes it's what you're looking for is right in front of you. It really is. Like you said, Muta getting a new coat of paint, 6 or 8 weeks of vignettes to augment his television exposure, having decisive, definitive wins. He was it. He's the package. And I know I've seen it. The women loved him. Believe it or not. Good looking guy. And he did that. The moonsault was kind of cool. And other things he did was kind of cool. So I'd love to see a program with Sting and Muta really played out well. And to the point that it would not have hurt my feelings if Muta eventually became the champ.
Well, we know that's not going to happen, at least here. But when they do go over to Tokyo, Muta gets the win. But then Sting sort of does a heelish move. After the match, he hits a Stinger Splash on Muta and put him in the Scorpion Deathlock. Now, again, this is Japan, but I am curious. When Sting first started his career, he was a heel. But man, at this point, since he's been a baby face, he's been a baby the entire time. Was there any consideration of turning him heel in 91, or did you know you can't do that? This is our guy for the kids and the merch.
The latter.
Yeah.
Our guy for the kids and the merch. Put too much money in that character for it to teeter and go another direction on a show in Japan against a wrestler that the majority of American wrestling fans were not overly familiar with. Muta needed more time here. And like I said, he was another guy. Everything was just cut short. See, like MJS promo he did with the other night about being bullied and all those things was a great promo, by the way, I thought. But I think that losing my train of thought. I think that Muta needed more time, and if we'd have given him more time, but everything seemed to be rushed. Everything seemed to be rushed, and I don't understand that. It's just it's like having a political election every 6 months instead of every 4 years in America. It's just everything stays in a state of flux, and dogs are chasing their tails endlessly.
So let's talk about what Sting is doing domestically. On all the house shows, it's Sting versus Flair for the world title with Gigante as the special guest referee.
Horrible. Horrible. It really was horrible. And I probably at WCW, because he stayed there in Atlanta, and he got lonesome, to be honest with you. George did. And so I spent more time with him than a lot of guys. He just come by the office and hang out. He had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And he liked to flirt with the girls. And we had some nice looking ladies working in the office there, or so I'm told. But that one of the biggest mistakes a booker can make is to take an untrained referee, a wrestler that's untrained as a referee, and put him in a match. I get, back in the old days, all those old posters, Jack Dempsey was a referee, and, Rocky Marciano was a referee. Well, they're there for one reason: their right hand. But I just don't see it's a good way to script a fucking match. Is put El Gigante. You think El Gigante in his wildest dreams, he had one clue: do I break on the right side or do I break on the left side? If the guy is left-handed, do I go on his opposite side so I don't get hit in the face with his left hand, left elbow? Yeah, but they won't know that. When you count the shoulders, your head should be even with the guy that's getting pinned, so you can see both the shoulders that are down. And that's a lost art. But they don't know these things, and you work with a talented talented talents. They're expecting you to be at a certain place at a certain time.
Yes.
You can screw the whole damn chemistry and timing up if you're not careful. So that was good for a poster. And if you're going to do it, Connie, you make two referees. You have a regular referee in the ring, and you have the second referee patrolling the outside, like he's a bodyguard type deal. But to put El Gigante in the ring, for God's sakes, are we shitting? That must have been everybody's late for a flight and had to get home. So it just makes no sense. It's almost comical.
I should mention, on the heels of this whole Muta Sting thing over in Tokyo, when they come out of there, it's at least reported as if Sid Vicious is unhappy, and he's unhappy that he's been asked to put over Sting and Luger. It felt like in this era, Sid was almost never happy anyway. What do you remember with Sid Vicious, perhaps his lot in life and being unhappy with it, and how much of that had anything to do with Sting and Luger?
Probably had everything to do with Sid.
Yeah.
And not as much about Sid about the Luger and Sting is one might assume. And, Sid, as he should, had a very high opinion of his own work. Sid was one of those guys where it was a can't miss. You know he was going to be really, really good. But when you're dealing with talent, Conrad, it's imperative that the decision maker in the booking department and the talent have got to be on the same timeline. In other words, if I'm talking, you're the talent and I'm the booker, you and I gotta agree that you're 6 months away from this big win. You're going to make it the champion or whatever. We got to be on the same timeline. And a lot of guys thought they're ready today. And why am I not getting what I want today? And maybe they're right, but the issue is that's not your call. That's the office's call. Their coach is calling the plays. The right guards are not calling the plays. Coach is calling the plays. So I think it had more to do with Sid and Sid's desire to be the top guy, which is what everybody in wrestling should want to be in your company, the top guy. They make the most money. They get the most media stretch. They get the most covers and all these things. So video games, action figures. When I finally get my action figure, I may be the only son of a bitch in the world that gets an action figure posthumously.
Well, you've had an action figure in WWE. You just made an AEW one.
Yeah.
It is weird. It is weird that Cody had 32 of them and you didn't have any.
Did he really?
Not really. I joked when it was out that he was no longer with WWE or AEW. Asked my group chat, hey, what variant of his tights are they going to do next time with the next round of figures if he's not there? So maybe what they could do is they could take your head, put a little cowboy hat on it, and put it on all those leftover Cody ones they've got for the next round of figures. There you go.
Super, there you are. You're a problem solver.
So, hey, Sting and Lex are announced as taking on the Steiners at the very first Super Brawl. And it feels surreal to me that this is such a different business than it is now. But I mean, we're fresh off of this guy being the world champion and we're putting him immediately into a tag situation. And it's two babyface teams. As a kid, I absolutely loved it. As an adult, I don't know this is what I would have done. What did you think at the time of the Steiners versus Sting and Luger?
It was a beautiful 1 or 2 off or short run program. It had enough star power in it to make me interested in watching it. And then if the talents execute as they should to work a return, and it's booked to work a return, then you may get more than one off of it. But at some point, one of those two teams is going to become a little bit more of the antagonist than not at some point. But it didn't bother me, Conrad, because the other thing about it is internally, I knew this. Those 4 guys are all friends. And they all liked each other. They had longer tenures together than a lot of guys. So I knew that the matches would be better than people would perceive them to be. So I didn't have a problem with it, but I didn't see it going long term if there's no clear-cut heel or baby face.
I'm curious, did you think at this point that the audience was just burned out on Sting and Flair? Because it feels like after they've had this big war, literally now a WarGames match. So, we follow up the title drop at the house show with a WarGames match on pay-per-view. But now the next pay-per-view, instead of doing something with Flair and Sting, it's Sting and Lex and a tag affair. Flair's off doing something else. In your opinion, that was the audience just didn't want to see it? They had enough of it by that point?
I think they felt they were being force-fed, the audience. And so, I think that we'd overexposed that match. I mean, what else could they do? They've been in all kinds of cage matches and this, that, and the other. They go on Broadway. So I don't know what else you could. And they worked it with each other for months and months and months, and it's just a lot of bit repetitive. I call a ton of their matches, obviously, and I enjoyed them all. Some better than others, obviously. This is natural. But I think we force fed the audience, and they started spitting it back at us. And it wasn't fair to the talent either, because we weren't doing enough creatively to keep the story hot. And that's another function of booking.
Well, let's talk about the Super Brawl match. I absolutely love this match as a kid. They did a great package building towards this too. Meltzer would write there was a new video guy helping out with it. The result is, after Sting was involved in a 5-star match for the first pay-per-view of 91, here's 4.5 stars. So critically well received. It only goes 11 minutes and 8 seconds, but my goodness, what a match. Meltzer would say, they showed the video before the match began. I was really surprised about a lot of things in the match. First, of course, is just how good it really turned out to be, but also the amount of heat generated in a battle of baby faces. The heat was super, far and away the most on the show. And considering this was a total Japanese style match, it says something about how the crowds are changing and what they really want. I expected it to be like the Warrior Steiners match at Starrcade 89, trading good moves, but the crowd not popping big. But Sting was the MVP of the show, and it was the best he's looked since coming back from the knee injury. All 4 guys obviously put a lot into the match, both in the ring and also in putting it together. The Steiners were chilled slightly more throughout the match, but it didn't seem like anyone was booed. It opened with Lex and Rick trading spots. He does the rundown. Ultimately, it's critical to the finish. We know Nikita's going to get involved, but still, he says it was still a cheap non-finish that took a lot away for what was probably one of the best matches of the year. 4.5 stars. What'd you think?
I didn't like the finish because you weren't committed. I mean, if the booker and the agents or whomever, Conrad, can't come up with a finish that gets you a winner and establishes a loser in that contest, you got the wrong people booking. There was no reason for that. I understood the logic of Nikita, and I know that Dusty liked Nikita. I know all the political shit there. I get it. And Nikita was a big star, but he was dancing the wrong dance. There's already a dance floor was full. I don't understand why he needed to be in there. And if you're going to give him a big push, that ain't the place to start. So, I know how Watts would have booked it. If you wanted to get Nikita over, he goes in the ring and whips all 4 of their asses. They feed, come back, and he dicks his powder, gets the hell out. You make him a star. You make him stand out. I don't know that Nikita did anything. I don't remember even what he did. So how viable was it? And I called the match. So I don't think we needed that. And it's a crutch, Conrad. It's a crutch. It's a political crutch to keep more people happy. Because this way we can say, well, I didn't have to beat the Steiners. I didn't have to beat Sting and Lex.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at that as a bad thing. They lost. So in your mind now, if you're a former wrestler or an active wrestler, semi-active, whatever, and you're the booker, I can see that logic because you're thinking like one of the boys. You're not thinking what's best for the show and the storyline development of this contest. And I think that's we're there a lot. And you got that a lot when you have bookers that were active wrestlers. They had a different mindset. They had a different list of priorities. Their boxes that they needed to check were different than an objective box, where a guy like Muchnick or somebody who's not going to wrestle, who's a businessman, Paul Bosch, businessman, Vince Senior, businessman. Cowboy would come back and wrestle every now and then when the houses are down or something. But by and large, he was a businessman. And then you got away from that because all of a sudden these owners were hiring guys to book. And one of the reasons they hired these guys to book was because they could use them on their cards. So the guy comes in, he's working on top, A, B, he's the booker. And that's just a tough balance because the locker room in a subjective business that's theatrical in nature, they're not sure what straight of hand they're going to get. So anyway, I think that's always been a fallacy of our business. That's one of the good things about Tony Khan is that I don't envision Tony ever doing a wrestling skit. And he books things that he wants to see. And as long as he's still as big a fan as he is, we made a big deal the other day about having either a count out or a DQ or something. And I admire that we stood our ground, but why do we change? Why do you have to have do we really believe in 2022, Conrad, that a DQ will salvage the face of the guy losing?
No.
It's silly, isn't it?
Yes. No, that doesn't matter anymore.
No, it doesn't. I was going to ask you a question. We talked about what Melcher said about it was a Sting and Luger tag match of Steiners was a Japanese style match.
I knew you.
What does that mean? What does that mean? You know what that means? I don't. I really don't. I'm not being facetious.
I think he means hard hitting. Let's play into the crowd. You know, I mean, listen, there was the old school, you know, you stomp your foot and go, Ricky, go. You know, that was that thing. And then there was what they do in Japan, which is more of a, we're going to do some spectacles. We're going to have some big power moves. We're not going to, it's going to be a little stiffer, a little snugger, a little less gaga. I just get the idea that it's a little less gaga, or as you like to say, a little more steak, a little less sizzle. That's the way I read it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good answer. And I like that style.
Yeah.
But the first time I saw that style, I was a hell of a long way from Japan.
Yes. You were in Louisiana and probably at the boys club watching guys beat the hell out of each other for real.
Bingo. Long way from Tokyo.
Yeah.
And
but that's what Dave held in high, it still does hold in high regard. So just like you know, sometimes on the show here, I'll say Roll Tide. I'm sure some of our friends across the pond had to Google that. They don't have a frame of reference for what that is. I get that. Why would they know about college football from, you know, Tuscaloosa? I get that. But I think Dave's wheelhouse was all Japan at this time.
Yeah. Well, you gave me, that's a good definition of what it is. Less nonsense, more athleticism.
Yeah.
And people were, I don't want to say stiff, because stiff indicates they were dangerous and were hurting people, but they sure as fuck were snug.
They focused more on realism.
Yeah.
You in this era, in my opinion, because JR and I, or you're JR, Tony and I debate this all the time. Tony thinks you go back and you listen to your Attitude Era stuff, and it's the best work of your career or any wrestling announcer ever. And I, as much as I love the calls, still prefer listening to your stuff from like this era, like 89, 90, 91, 92. I love that you brought a sense of realism. You called it like an athletic competition. You talked about everybody's athletic background. I mean, I could buy into, I'm watching a pay-per-view fight. I'm not watching entertainment. And don't get me wrong, the calls you did with Vince, my God, people are still talking about them. They're memes every week. If there's a big collision in the NFL or something, or a big knockout, my God, we're getting a voiceover from JR from that era. So I get that was certainly bigger and more successful. Just me personally, I like the athletic approach to your call. And I think that's probably what Meltzer liked in the ring.
I got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's a little different. I wish I could, even today, I sometimes you get that match that you can do all that in.
Yeah.
You know, I look at a match like Moxley and Bryan Danielson to be old schoolish wrestling, snug, uncomfortable on Sunday night on pay-per-view. I see that as that match where you're kind of, damn, oh, they're laying the shit there. They're going to hurt somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when they, like, even something as simple as this, I don't know what they're going to do. I have no idea. Don't want to know. Let's say somebody uses a crossface. Boom. Well, there's a lot of ways to apply that hold. You can apply it like you work part-time at the DX station. You don't want to break your nose and go to the doctor because you're not making enough money. Or you can do it like old school guys would do it. They were so skilled in their technique, they could make it look like it killed you. And I've seen a lot of bloody noses from a crossface. They weren't scheduled.
Yeah.
But your nose is a delicate instrument, I guess you could say. Easy to break or easy to make bleed. So, but it takes it. It's really the music and the lyrics. I've said it before here, but that's what you got. As you get, and if the combination comes together, then God dang, man, there's just no reason you should be killing it. And that's what we expect to do on Sunday night. I believe that there's going to be some matches on there. They're going to take me back to the Attitude Era. You know, I always find my head in a Superdome manner, where Cowboy booked his best matches at the Superdome on Thanksgiving and Christmas and so forth. I always find myself back there because that's what made me happiest. And if I can draw on that, then I think it translates to the fan at home watching on television. So, but this is a good lesson for a lot of fans to understand. And it's good for me to review it again and get back to those roots. So already this show's a hit to me.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's keep the show on the track though and talk about Nikita. Why do you think creative at the time, whoever it may be, thought Nikita was the right opponent for Sting?
Well, who was the booker?
Well, I think this is still very much by committee. At this point, Flair has officially, quote unquote, stepped down. It's the Jim Herd era. So I think we've got a couple of Jims on there and some Kevin Sullivan's on there. I think we've got a whole host of folks. But I mean, listen, I get Nikita as a top heel act, but it's interesting to think about. We got to find something for him to do after Flair. So we put him in a WarGames scenario. Then we put him in a babyface tag scenario. He goes abroad and kind of works as a heel against Muta. But now here, after the tag rendezvous, I guess now there's no denying Sting's firmly a babyface because Nikita's nothing but a big nasty heel. I get it.
Right. I think Nikita got a lot of stretch out of, Nikita did a hell of a job of salvaging JCP after Magnum TA's wreck.
Yeah, I guess to your point, timeline wise, right after Royal Rumble 91, Dusty comes back. Right. So this has definitely got Dusty's fingerprints on it.
Dusty loved him. And look, Scott's a great guy. He's a real Christian guy. He does a lot of speaking now and things of that nature. He's really evolved into a wonderful man. But he looks so deadly and so dangerous. He was pretty damn athletic for a guy that's jacked up as he was. But what the role that he played in becoming Dusty's partner and becoming the superpowers and all that stuff and stepping in for Magnum was nothing short of extraordinary, because people accepted him as a viable substitute. Was Nikita the worker that Magnum was? No. But he was perceived as a major star, and his look and his intensity had a lot to do with that. So I don't know what the exact reason to answer your question directly, but I know that he had some equity built up where the perception was this guy is a superstar.
No doubt about it. He was over like Rover and Dusty loved him. Clash of the Champions 15 goes down in Nashville. It's Sting versus Nikita. They're going to go 9 minutes and 32 seconds, and Sting gets the win with a schoolboy. Meltzer says this was the only match on the entire show that had adequate time to get over what it was supposed to. But unfortunately, while it had adequate time, it wasn't a good match. Can't complain, however, because since Nikita was doing a clean job, they wanted the entire match to be him on the offense, and they needed time to get that point across. Of course, Nikita is so limited that it exposed him as a worker. The finish saw Sting finally do an offensive move by reversing a tombstone, but he missed the stinger splash into the corner. Koloff then went for the sickle into the corner, but Sting moved, got behind him, and schoolboyed him for the pin. The finish was well done, but the match was lackluster. 1.5 is what he gave it. I think that's a fair assessment. Maybe it accomplished what we wanted. We wanted to get Sting a win, but probably not the match we were hoping for.
Right. Yeah. Well, it exposed what the obvious, like I said, Nikita had to be booked in a certain way.
Yes.
The way that Nikita got over was eating people alive.
Right.
And mauling their ass, just beating the shit out of them. And people have bought into that deal. There's where you find out where, if a heel is being booed and people don't like him, all of a sudden there's a different feel in the crowd and the audience. It means he's elevated to star status. And Nikita at one time had been elevated to star status because, again, the Magnum TA situation, such an emotional deal. And the promos that Dusty and Nikita did regarding Magnum were phenomenal. So, but Nikita was never a great quote unquote worker. Dusty would sell and Nikita would get the comeback. That was the formula.
Right.
And if that formula is working, what is the motivation to change it for the sake of change? And that's another fallacy in wrestling booking, is that bookers think that they're compelled to change things when what they're doing, they may not be drawing big money right now, but you're on the right track.
Right.
And but oftentimes when you're on the right track, even you decide, well, I got to change direction. Why? Well, it's just time for a change. Based on what? Your goddamn forensic accounting of the gates and the profit and loss statement, or whatever. I don't get that. So, but Nikita could have been managed a little bit differently. There's no doubt about that. But I don't disagree with the fact that he had star appeal, superstar appeal. And how can we best monetize that?
Let's talk about Nikita for a minute. Do you think at this point, I don't mean to say the bloom is off the rose, but is it sort of done? He's going to stick around. I think he wrestles his last match in November of 92. But you go back to 85, 86. I mean, that was really the height.
Yeah.
Here by 91, had the business just changed too much? Did he not evolve? I don't know whose fault it was. I guess what I'm trying to get to is this one of the last meaningful things that we think we're going to get out of Nikita?
Probably.
Yeah.
And he may, and I don't know this to be, this is a casual observation. Somebody was there. I think maybe he didn't have the, I don't know, the piss of vinegar that he once had. It seemed like he wasn't as intense as he once was. He was doing, and he didn't change his game plan or his strategy, game planning. And you got to evolve. You got to change a little bit. And he didn't seemingly didn't do that. It was like, well, there's Nikita again. It's like the old days of Arn Anderson wrestling every Saturday on TBS. You know what's going to happen. So, and I'm not, hey, look, I can watch Arn Anderson all day, every day. Wouldn't bother me a bit. But I think Nikita maybe he lost his edge. Conrad, maybe just that flame wasn't burning as brightly as it once was.
So later on that night, there's a pretty cool angle. Meltzer would write, next was an angle where the winner of a fictitious Sting lookalike contest, and this is where they had Kevin Sullivan's son, Ben, face painted exactly like Sting, came out. And of course, they bring Sting out to meet him. And then Nikita attacked Sting during the segment with a chain and glared like he's going to attack Ben. Ben's mom, who is his mom in real life, hopped the guardrail to quote unquote protect her son, while Doug Dillinger stepped in front of Nikita. And then Ben hovered over a fallen Sting. It was a great angle. Kids and moms, man, that's money in wrestling almost every time, is it not?
Yeah, it seems to be. You got a lot of credit for that goes to Kevin Sullivan, because I'm sure Kevin produced it. His son was involved in it. The wife was involved in it. And, Sully was really good at coming up with booking for heels. Really had a feel for it, So that was one of the nicer things we did then. That was a great angle, as you said. I agree with you. And I agree with Meltzer. It was a great angle. And that helped Nikita. Nikita needed more of that, Conrad. He needed more nasty. Give me more nasty illustrations of your personality and who you are. And if we can do that on a regular basis, we would have rebuilt the star. And that's what we needed to do. We needed to the stars we had that still were young enough to get it done needed to be rebuilt and reignited. And the other side of that conversation is the guys that were new need to be given an opportunity. See if they get over. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe strike lightning in a bottle, or that cliche is. But the bottom line is that Kevin Sullivan probably deserves a lot more credit for this angle than people realize. His little boy was a natural, great personality.
Great segment.
Yeah. I remember one time Kevin couldn't find Ben. He came to TV and he was missing for like an hour or two. Well, in today's world, that'd be a direct call to Chicago PD or, SVU or somebody. But what had happened was the Steiners had caught up with him and they taped his body with adhesive tape from ankle to eyes. He looked like a little mummy. And we're in a locker room, which had lockers, and that's where they found him. He looked like a little mummy, and he wanted to fight them both when he was done. It was just funny. He's a great kid. He's a grown man, I'm assuming now, obviously. Hadn't heard from him yet or nay, but he was a perfect little personality to do that.
So we all know what's coming next. Ric Flair is going to leave WCW. You were there when all this happens. Clearly, there's going to be 1,000 meetings about this. Sting's name has to be at the center of every conversation about what do we do next, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's been so many off start, and as far as Rick was concerned, you think that was the first time that we heard that Rick was frustrated, would like to leave? That was a normal course of business. That wasn't anything. That wasn't a new topic to discuss. So, but yeah, it was there. That's what I've said before. In this era, working in WCW wasn't a lot of fun because it was the same worn out topics, the same worn out bullshit every single week, and it just didn't. And it's like being in a marriage and your wife saying, if you don't straighten up, stop drinking, if you don't straighten up and start saving money, if you don't straighten whatever, then I'm leaving. And those false starts are 5 yards a clock and a whack in football, 5 yards, but it's a penalty. And at some point in time, you get tired of getting those 5 yarders. And that's what this was to me. So when you hear, well, Rick's going to WWF, okay, what are you going to do? Panic? I heard this last week. Heard it a year ago. Because that was the only option that talents had. Kind of like to not. It wasn't as extreme as it is it was more extreme then than it is today, because I think, maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of guys were not going to go from where they were to, Ring of Honor or something like that. They just weren't. And I'm not knocking Ring of Honor. Just nobody was going to top WWF for perception and so forth. So I don't know, man. I think that I think that we just had to figure out a way to make objective decisions and give some guys a break that were new and rebuild those that we thought could still contribute. And then when you get all those ingredients carried a box over here and a box over there, carried into your kitchen to cook, sometimes you get too many cooks in the kitchen and it don't taste right.
Of course, a lot of the issue with Flair is he feels like he's not being paid fairly. The rumor and innuendo is that he felt like Sting and Luger were making more than him and he helped, quote unquote, make them. So either way, he's out of here. And the result is a pretty disastrous Great American Bash, which we've covered in the archives, the one from 91 in Baltimore. But there is a decent little match on here with Sting and Nikita Koloff in a chain match. Unbelievably, though, Nikita wins. He beats Sting in this chain match in 11 minutes and 37 seconds. Meltzer would say, some good pops for low blows. Both guys touched the first three corners and brawled for a while, then sprinted to hit the fourth corner with Nikita hitting at first. Sting gave Nikita a low blow with the chain after the match was over. 2.25 stars. Jim,
that's political booking. Why, Conrad, would you need Sting to hit one more low blow after losing? Why couldn't you just leave the heat for winning and cheating on the heel and let him carry that heat with him back to the locker room and for the next television show? That's silly to me. That's political booking. That way, if I was Nikita, I'd be pissed off. Sting was getting a little something back that really, at the end of the day, didn't mean anything, but could be termed to mean everything. Yeah, at the end of the night, who's going to walk out of there? You are. Stop.
My thinking is, if I've lost my biggest star and Ric Flair's really gone, and maybe I've pissed off part of the audience, why wouldn't I try to let my supposed next biggest star, Sting, get a freaking win here? Send them home happy.
Well, you could make good. I can't argue the point that you're wrong. I can see both sides of it from being in that world a lot. But at the end of the day, just on base what was booked and what was executed, the low blow by Sting at the end was unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree.
All the hard work, the low blows, the chain, the whole 9 yards, because at the end of the day, Connie, you know that when they have a rematch, God knows there'll be plenty of those son of a bitches. that at the end of the day that Sting will get his win back, so to speak, and will come out on top and be looking like the hero that he was positioned to be. But that finish there was just a cheap ass way of getting out of it, and trying to at least keep guys happy for the night. And I just think that's wrong philosophy of booking.
So let's talk about what's next. It's the big debut for WCW in St. Louis, and there's only 1,726 fans here. It's a $21,000 gate, and we've got to get a big crowd here. So we're going to tag up Sting and PN News to take on Stan Hansen and the Great Muta. That's a real match that actually happened. And there's also an autograph session advertised for this event that was supposed to take place before the event. But according to the Observer, Sting refused to go out. And that is something I have never heard about Mr. Borden ever before.
Me neither.
Do you remember Sting developing an ego, an attitude problem? Was he upset there, or is this just maybe once Dave got it wrong?
I don't know if Dave got it wrong or not. I think Sting was getting very frustrated with the infrastructure, and he thought it was, and I don't blame him. I mean, goddamn, you got nobody there. St. Louis, one of the great wrestling cities in America, 1,726 people. Dismal, a failure. And for him to walk out and be in front of 1,700 people, because and that's being exaggerating, because it's obvious all 1,700 didn't come to the autograph session. It don't happen. But I never heard the story. Maybe I just forgot about it. But I never one time thought that Sting was a prima donna or was getting full of himself. I do think he was getting smarter with the ways of the world of the business. I think he was able to tell when he was being worked than when he was younger. He was so naive and positive and trusting. He'd been screwed around so many times, he didn't trust anybody. And I can't say as I blame him. PN News is fits in that category of trying to give somebody new a chance to get over. He just wasn't the right guy. The concept was fine. Get somebody in that spot, get the rub of these guys. And of course, with PN News, it gave Hansen somebody to beat up. Because that's going to happen. So you want him beating up your star unmercifully? Or do you want him to take care of the new guy? The new guy got the nod there.
So WCW is trying to push new gimmicks here, like Oz, to draw younger viewers. But in reality, Sting's right here. But we're trying to add some garnish with the PN Newses and the Oz's. But thankfully, Cactus Jack is coming back to WCW, and he's going to be programmed with Sting. On top of that, Abdul the Butcher is also programmed to be coming after the Stinger. That is an interesting story. Two crazy madmen taking on Sting. That is a definite, change in style for Sting. He's going from working guys like Ric Flair to guys like Cactus Jack and Abdul the Butcher. But that is more, I don't know, entertainment style booking. That feels like old school wrestling right there. You got this good looking neon face painted baby face with the crazy hairstyle taking on a couple of madmen, huh?
Yeah. And Conrad, looking at it on a bigger picture, if Sting was the NWA champion, he was traveling, he'd be wrestling those kind of guys anyway.
Yes.
So did it hurt him to learn to adapt to unique styles? Because Abdullah was not going to change what Abdullah did. I mean, he was set in his way, and it had worked for Abdullah for decades. Mick Foley was just a big bonus. I still don't think maybe people realize in the wrestling business how valuable he was for every company that he worked for. So I didn't have a problem with that. Again, I'll go back to this situation. Oz and some of these other cats were the right idea. Get somebody new that might get over. The same reason you put guys in a faction. you hope one of them, of the four or the three, spin out and become a star. And so that's what I don't disagree with that, the philosophy of going this way. It's just the fact that, we might not have been going with the right people, but you don't know until you get into it. For you and I to talk about it now, all these years later, we know that PN News was not a star. We know that the gimmick, the persona of Oz was never going to draw any money. But the 7-foot guy that was pretty athletic in those days when his knees weren't so bad, Kevin Nash, was money. And, every Friday on the Ad Free Network, we have our radio shows available for WSB. And that's where Kevin got a lot of his legs, because he was a bouncer at the Cheetah Gentleman's Establishment, I'm told. And he'd come on my radio show on Sunday night because he was off work. And people found out he was intelligent, he could talk. And so I think that helped him a lot over the years. He's an intelligent, cerebral guy. But I'm not talking about Oz, I'm talking about Kevin. So I like the concept, Connie, but again, the cabinet's a little bit bare. When you're trying to retread and repackage, so to speak, Abdullah, you know what you're going to get out of Abdullah, and that's all. But that's enough. It's booked right.
So unfortunately, as Sting makes these house shows, he's met with a ton of "We want Flair" chants, which is really not fair to him. But I could understand how he would be super frustrated with this.
Yep.
But there's an angle on TV where Sting is opening these boxes. And of course, once upon a time, Cactus Jack was in one and Abdullah was in one. But now there's a young girl who hands Sting a note that he should retire. And it's reported in the Observer that the original idea was this box was going to be Bam Bam Bigelow. Do you remember hearing that maybe there would be a Bam Bam Bigelow versus Sting match here on the horizon?
Well, Bam Bam was available, and we would have loved to have had him on the roster if he was, healthy. And but I don't know how close that deal ever got to becoming. I remember it being discussed a lot.
Yeah.
There was no discussion on whether or not he was able to work. Was he, could he still perform? Yes. All those answers are yes. But he is also having some drug and alcohol issues. And so that's got to be weighed in. So, but I don't know how close we really were to getting that deal done.
Well, Sting wins the vacant U.S. title at the Omni on the final night of the Great American Bash Tour. There's only 5,000 fans here for only $38,000. A far cry from the original vision for these bash tours, and maybe a sign of just where the company is here in 91. But check out this list of people that Sting would beat in this U.S. tournament. So when people take a look at WCW 91 and think it's all bad, look at the roster.
Yeah.
Arn Anderson, Scott Hall, and Steve Austin. Those are Sting's opponents for the U.S. title. Man, they're every one of them a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just they were players that could play, and they were, whether it was on purpose or not, they were at the right spot at the right time. You want to build Sting, Scott Hall as he's a diamond stud then.
Yeah.
And then you got Austin and Arn. God Almighty, there's no reason this match shouldn't be good, and the heels would be able to lead the match and enhance Sting, which was the goal for everybody at that time.
Well, let's talk about what's next here on the program for Sting. He's going to be hitting the Meadowlands on August 29th. And as a reminder, he dropped the world title to Flair in a snowstorm on January 11th this same year. So January 11th, in the middle of a blizzard, there's 5,000 fans. Here, August 29th at the Meadowlands, 1,800. And I don't know that says a lot about Sting. Sting's not the world champion. At this point, it's Luger. I don't know that it even tells the whole story with Flair. It's just WCW creatively here. They were not resonating with fans. And yes, partially it's Sting. Yes, partially it's Luger. Yes, partially it's Flair. But overall, it was probably apparent to everyone inside and outside of the company that a change had to be made here pretty soon. Did it not?
Yeah. Yeah. You always had to go by the bottom line, and the bottom line was not very supportive of the creative, and the numbers don't lie. So yes, but look, we've identified these time for a change moments, multiple opportunities here.
Yes.
Not only in this show, but on this whole, every time we've talked about WCW in that era. The key is, who do you have to replace them? How are you going to introduce that new person into the mix? And is there a plan to build them? And the answer normally to all those questions is no. It's half-assed done. It's done shortchanged. You know, it's like we're going through the express lane. You couldn't let something build and mature, take your time, grow some roots, get things established. It's like, you know, we're 30 minutes or it's free.
Well, next up, it's Clash of the Champions, Fall Brawl from Augusta, Georgia. There's 2,800 fans here, and Sting is going to wind up defending his U.S. title against Johnny B. Bad. And Meltzer would say, it's really annoying when the announcers called Sting the most popular athlete ever to compete on TBS. Either way, though, the gist is the match is almost secondary because the finish sees a box brought out to ringside. Bad gets hit with Sting with a shot to the ribs and then stares at the box. Sting gets up. He stares at the box. They're both sort of ruining any pretense that there's a match going on, and they're just staring at the box. Eventually, Cactus comes out of the box, knocks over Teddy Long, blows by Johnny B, and attacks Sting, complete with an elbow off the middle rope onto Sting on the floor, and the double arm DDT, and a bunch of faces come out to make the save. So Cactus is here, and he's out of a box. And of course, Jim Cornette has taught us everybody who comes out of a box is automatically over. If you
or just that easy.
And then Sting heads off to Japan. The Chamber of Horrors match is announced for Halloween Havoc. Yet another boneheaded idea from WCW 91. It's Sting, El Gigante, and the Steiner brothers. In the very first match here of the night, are going to take on Abdul the Butcher, Oz, Diamond Stud, and Barry Windham. Somebody's getting electrocuted. It's so silly.
Yeah.
But before we actually get there, though, we've got to build the thing. But when you first hear the creative about the Chamber of Horrors, my God, what were you thinking?
I was thinking, I'm glad I was wearing dark pants that day because I think I pissed myself. Horrible.
Awesome.
How's it play out? You know, what's there? What can we get out of this thing? It's so limited, so gimmicky. But, you know, there was a time there we've talked about this because I was in a position to probably know more than a lot of guys on this topic, is that the insatiable quest to be as like WWE as they could be. This just solidifies that whole premise. You know, it was something that if you're going to do a match of this nature with a crazy ass title where the loser gets electrocuted, I think that means death. It's like the absurdity of having a Texas death match. Ain't nobody died in no Texas death matches.
Not yet.
Oh, and hopefully they won't. But I don't know. Looking at some of these names in this thing, you know, Casimir.
Oh yeah, let's talk about him. It feels like that's a creative idea that they want to try. Let's give this guy the rub. Meltzer would say the TV main event saw Cactus and Abdullah take on Sting and Eaton. And this match was completely screwed up because Eaton was supposed to get pinned and laid out, and then the heels would double on Sting and Kaz would make the save. That's what was supposed to happen. But instead, Kazmar came out before the match was over and started a run in until Nick Patrick stopped him and the whole gig was blown. And they're going to have to redo this match and Kazmar's squash match because fans were chanting steroids at him. And they're going to retape it on October 8th in Montgomery. The reason for this big push for Kazmar is, and this isn't made up, Luger and Kazmar are going to headline shows in early November, including the card at the Forum in Los Angeles and probably the show in San Jose as well. So I guess the idea is let's use some of Sting's popularity to help get Bill ready. Clearly, Bill is not ready, but it feels like WCW is so desperate for their next star. Having things like experience or in-ring ability, that shouldn't get in the way. Look at this big jacked up strong man. People are going to love him if we could just actually tell him how to do this.
Yeah. And the sad part about that story, Conrad, I don't disagree with anything he said, is that Bill Kazmaier Kaz was a nice guy.
It wasn't his fault.
No, nice guy.
What they asked of him.
I think he's an Alabama guy.
He is indeed great guy. I've met him several times.
Always polite, professional. You couldn't ask for a better representative of your company, quite frankly. It's just that he got pushed into action way too soon. He needed to be booked in an obscure way for a year or so. He needed to wrestle, 3 or 4 days a week. And I don't know that Bill wanted to make that kind of commitment. He might have. But I always found him to be a joy to be around. And with all you could do, the vignettes you could do with him and all his accolades that he had earned over time, could have made a great story to tell. And then finally, when he debuted, boom, you got something. I know who he is. I know why he's here. I know how strong he is. I know he beats you very simply. He can beat people with a bear hug. He can beat people with a headlock. And he looked great. Like I said, he's not going to be late. He's going to be on time. He's going to be prepared. And he's not going to embarrass you outside the ring and doing anything stupid. But he just wasn't ready, man. It's just that it's the same common denominator that we've talked about time and time again. No patience, and boom, there you go. It's just bad management. You needed somebody in there that could say, okay, we're not doing any of these things anymore. This is out, that's out, this is out. The DQs, all this other shit. Unless it's the right way of doing it at the right time. So then you do it when it meant something, not just because it's an easy way to create a lazy fucking finish.
Meltzer would write that in this era, Sting is going to be re-signing for a 3-year deal. Quote, Sting signed a 3-year contract that takes him through February of 95, reportedly for $500,000 for the first year, $600,000 for the second year, and $700,000 for the third year. That's big money in wrestling in this era. Both Scott Hall and Diesel, Kevin Nash, would refer to their contracts and their perceived future value and what the type of money they're trying to make. Their goals and aspirations were quote unquote Sting money. And this is what they're talking about. Jim, in this era, this is an awful thing to say, but I think it is factual. They've got a few months without Flair now, and they see fans are not happy. Business is down. Sting had a ton of leverage here in this deal, did he not? They couldn't afford to have Sting leave too.
No. And when Rick left, I'm not so sure how far apart, if any, Rick was compensation wise with Sting and Lex. I don't know the right answer, but I researched that one time. I know I saw numbers, legitimate numbers, and their monies are close. So that could not have been the only reason that Rick left, because Vince is not going to guarantee you a weekly salary in that era. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
So WCW did your check every week, and Vince paid on the houses and the payoffs and things like that. At the end of the year, if you over-earned your downside guarantee, you got that money. If you under-earned your downside guarantee, then the company ate the loss. So I think, but that was that was big money at that point in time, no doubt. That's big money now, Conrad.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I know that the rates have gone up, and some of the salaries in a lot of companies there's so many guys now making over $1 million guaranteed in pro wrestling business. It's unprecedented.
All-time high right now.
Absolutely. I remember one time on one of my rosters, we had 20-something guys make over $1 million in one calendar year. And
you probably got more than that in each company right now.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I think. Well, WWE for sure. I don't have to go down to make me an imaginary list of AEW, but
Well, let's not get in trouble. Let's talk about old state.
no, but I'm saying you're right about the statement.
Yeah.
More people are making 7 figures annually today
Than ever
in the entirety of pro wrestling than in the history of the business.
So October 13th, Sting and Cactus Jack takes place at the Greensboro Coliseum. Second from the top. I mean, Greensboro, the spiritual home of Starrcade. I mean, all the roots of this organization come out of Greensboro. Cactus Jack, this madman. Sting, the franchise who just re-signed. 430 fans.
Yeah.
The Coliseum holds tens of thousands of people.
Over 20,000.
There's 430 fans here.
But why wouldn't you just cancel? Why would you, when you saw the advance, why don't you just cancel? Save all the T&E, make yourself some money by doing that, and not have a major, the MSG of the South, Greensboro Coliseum, with an embarrassing 400 something people. And if you're the talent, you're working on top, there's one of the worst guttural feelings that you could have. But nobody wants to see our ass. And maybe they're right. Because they didn't come here tonight. So I don't understand that. And the other thing is that TVS was all excited at times, the marketing department of WCW more specifically, about adding vignettes and this, creating somebody's getting electrocuted and all these things. Well, why wouldn't you spend that money on the marketing department and live event promoters? Right?
Yeah.
You're in the ticket selling business, Conrad, for goddamn it. You're in the loan business.
Yeah.
You expect your people to make loans.
Yeah.
Get the signatures on the paper. That's your only goddamn job. Sell loans. And these market guys, their only job was to sell tickets and to cultivate the local market. And they did not do that. And they weren't forced to do it. They weren't managed to do it. It was more fun to play with the toys of pro wrestling. If you're those guys, the costuming, elegantes, all these other things. That's Electrocute Abdullah. All those little things were fun, the little buttons to push. It's like you're playing with action figures, and you're childlike in doing so. So that to me there's so many holes in that company at that time. It's not even funny. They're lucky they stayed in business in that era long as they did. And, it also goes to show you that, Bischoff got it. He got it. He got the right people to say yes and spending more money. He brought in talent that were established, name, identity, drawing, main event level talent. And nobody else has been able to accomplish that.
So let's talk about the next new low, Chamber of Horrors. We've talked about this in the archives, but Chattanooga, Tennessee gets quite the interesting show to open the pay-per-view. Sting and Elegante and the Steiner brothers are going to beat Cactus Jack, Abdul the Butcher, Big Van Vader instead of Oz, and Diamond Stud in 12 minutes and 36 seconds. So they're explaining Barry Windham can't be a part of the match here because prior to the show, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko smashed the door on Wyndham's hand to explain his absence here. And Vader is going to step in for Windham, and Cactus Jack is going to step in for Oz. And Meltzer would say, even though the match came off good live with 3 guys juicing, on TV, it was a nightmare. At the beginning of the match, an electric chair came down, and we were told the match went in when someone was placed on the chair, and one of the teammates flipped the switch and zapped him with volts. Which is all well and good, but had nothing to do whatsoever with the advertised stipulations, which were so confusing, nobody but remembered them to begin with. Between the electric chair, the referee camera, which is the referee camera, it only served to make viewers at home nauseous. The ghouls at ringside and the 2 masked jobbers that came out of a coffin during the match to give Rick Steiner somebody to beat up on. This looked like the brainchild of a TV executive on LSD, with no knowledge or respect of pro wrestling. In fact, just trying to make fun of it. Aside from the LSD comment, that's pretty much what happened. The off lever kept flipping on into the on position. He says they wasted a lot of quality talent with this one.
Yeah, sit there and call it live, Conrad, with no net, no rehearsal, no script, no nothing, and try to make some sense of this shit.
And to be clear, Abdul the Butcher gets in the chair and gets electrocuted, and he's supposed to do a stretcher job to sell, the explosion and that he was electrocuted, but he didn't. He just started beating up ghouls instead. So -2 stars. At that moment, I feel like you're putting on a brave face and trying to soldier on, but you got to be thinking, shit, it might be time to update my resume.
Well, nothing was going to replace for me even today emotionally, not being in the pro wrestling business.
Right.
But I was at the point to where I was more than willing to explore my options. And 2 years later, that happened. I helped there as long as I could. I wasn't a great corporate fit. Eric didn't believe that. And I don't blame him. Maybe I wasn't, but I didn't have any trouble getting work.
Nope.
And then the next place I stopped, I stayed 26 years. So
it worked out.
Yeah, you do the math.
It's just fascinating to me to think about. We had this big booking committee, and this is what we come up with. Go listen to it in the archives. Jim and I poke a lot of fun at it. It's just, we talked about WarGames. If you're going to watch one match from this year, if you want to watch one for a totally different reason, well, that was it.
Yeah, no kidding.
By the middle of November, it seems like Sting and Medusa are going to start a program to get Paul E involved. And it feels like there's a focus of knowing that Luger's contract is coming up and he's the champion. So maybe we need somebody to help get Sting back ready to be the flag bearer here. So maybe he needs one opponent and then go right to Luger. Is that sort of your thinking? I mean, at this point, you knew probably internally, hey, we're not getting all of our best out of Luger. He's going to probably go check out some greener pastures.
Yeah.
We know Sting's just re-signed. He's here. We got to find a way to get Sting ready to be that guy again. Right.
Yeah. And it wasn't that we had an abundance of great heels, to do that with. But you're right. Sting had to be once again, new shine, new coat of paint, new presentation, new face paint, whatever the hell it was. New. It's the same guy just being repackaged. And the key to that completed repackaging project is he's got somebody he's going to work with until he beats Luger for the title that we want to see. So the second question, the biggest question is, who the hell is that? Because we don't really have anybody. We sold 400 tickets from Greensboro. You and me can do the math on that deal, big boy.
Yeah, we've sold more tickets for that for our live show. So
yeah,
we know what's next. It's ravishing Rick Rude. He's the answer. Sting is attacked at the Clash and put in peril for his U.S. title match against Rick Rude, and Sting is going to hobble back from the hospital, and then we have the match. We just covered this last year. One of the better pieces of business that ever happened in 1991 was this story. It got 3 stars. It's a short match. Rick Rude beat Sting to get the U.S. title. And I know what you're thinking. Well, hang on now. If Luger's leaving, why would you have Sting be beat? Well, Sting's got the U.S. title. So we need that belt. We need the secondary belt off of him so he's ready for the big belt.
Right. And it sets up returns. If Rude was able to beat Sting for the U.S. title, who's to say he's not able to beat Sting for the world title?
Ding, ding, ding. Pretty cool idea here where Rude and Dangerously are in the ring, ready to be awarded for the match by forfeit. But Sting has hijacked an ambulance from Parts Unknown Medical Center back to the Savannah Civic Center just in the nick of time. And Meltzer would say it was predictable and almost too hokey, but it's the best job they've done in getting Sting over as a babyface since the Horseman turned on him in early 90. He says, after all that work and giving Sting an excuse to lose between the pre-match attack and constant working on the knee, they should have done a stronger finish, but it was very intense for such a short match. So either way, Rude is our champ, our U.S. champ, but now Sting's got a fresh opponent and a real opponent. Sting Rude maybe could have been drawn out a little more, Maybe
Yeah.
could have been a little more money. I mean, Rude had just done great business with Warrior back in 90. Why not do the same with Sting here in 91?
I agree. Yeah. And Rude's a great heel. I think they were worried that Sting was going to flatten out or whatever. Rude would never have let that happen. But there were a lot more miles, a lot more tread on the tires for Luger, excuse me, for Sting and Rude than we saw. But that just shows you how valuable Rude was. Kind of a undervalued guy. I mean, he was the go-to guy immediately. You know, to get all these title changes, the U.S. title, and all this stuff, and set up, because it didn't take the village idiot could figure out that Lex is not going to stick around.
Right.
You know, Vince already made his play. He got Flair right.
Yep.
And taking Luger would kill us in a lot of people's mind. Sting was not going to be available because he'd renewed another long-term deal for more money. So, I'm with you on that deal. I think, Rude was a savior in a lot of ways, and I would have been happy to. I love calling those matches, because here's the thing: we've talked about this. Who calls the match in the ring? The heel, and that took a lot of pressure off Sting. He didn't have to think of every spot to do. He could supplement the spots. He could augment the spots. He could contribute to the spots. But the guy that was leading the way was the heel, and the heel was a good ring general named Rick Rude.
And man, he's going to be primed for a big year, or so it seems, because now they're getting ready for Battle Bowl Starrcade 91, but they're already advertising Super Brawl with Lex versus Sting for the title. In hindsight, I think we all agree Battle Bowl was a miss. Should they have just done Sting and Luger at Starrcade instead?
Probably, in hindsight.
Yeah.
What are you waiting on? Are you doing anything specific that you need that time to build more anticipation and hopefully draw a bigger gate and sell more pay-per-views? Maybe. I mean, you can make an argument for that. But I'm like you. I'm not going to chance any injuries, any late last minute bullshit. Nothing. Let's take care of our business. And but I will say, and I've been preaching this, so I'm not a hypocrite, I guess. At least they had a plan, Conrad.
That's right.
At least they had a destination. They had goals. They knew where they're going to go with this thing. So, but there's so many things that could go wrong. I wouldn't want to take that time to let that happen. So I'm with you on that deal. I'd have beat him earlier.
So Sting and Abby are going to team up at Starrcade to defeat Bobby Eaton and Brian Pillman to advance to the Battle Royal. We just covered that. Sting eventually defeats Luger to earn a title shot. And now it's official. Sting is getting another title shot, Super Brawl 2. And Tony Schiavone and I just covered that yesterday here on our adfreeshows.com network. So check out Tony Schiavone's podcast anytime you'd like. What Happened When is the name of it. But we literally just did a watch along for when Sting wins the world title the second time, this time from Lex Luger at Super Brawl 2. But that's 1992 and a Sting story for another day. But when you take a look at Sting's 1990, it was such a troubled start. It felt like, man, this is the big year. And then bam, he gets the big ACL tear or the torn meniscus, whatever the patella injury was. He's out. He needs knee surgery.
Right.
He comes back early. He makes it work. He's now going to be the man, dethroning Sting or dethroning Flair. We don't really have any real plans. Ole Anderson just pulls the whole Black Scorpion out of his ass, and we try it, and it worked until it didn't. But then 1991, he spends the entire year really getting geared back up to be the man again. And
he had some great matches, man. Sting had some great matches, Conrad, in that era. Where Meltzer divvy up from matches that Sting was in, 4 stars, 5 stars, that type of thing. I thought Sting had in the ring had a really strong year, and in different environments with different opponents, he kept delivering. That was received positively by probably the best known pro wrestling critic in the business, Dave Meltzer. And I think all those things that we read Meltzer was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Because I think the expectations that Sting was a great worker weren't as fully established yet. But Sting did a lot for himself in a positive way. You know, to have those great matches he was having was pretty amazing. But he came into his own. I mentioned earlier, why would he not go do the autographs in St. Louis? Because he's being worked. Here's your champ. Here they are. And then you go to Greensboro. Let's have this show in Greensboro so the whole world can know that we went from doing 20,000 people in that building at one time for big shows to 400.
Mm-hmm.
There's your champ for you. It's just it gave more fodder and more fuel to the fire of uncertainty and discontent and second guessing.
Talk to me a little bit about the mentality of a professional wrestler. You know, we've often heard from like an MMA guy or a boxing guy, hey, you learn more from a loss than you do a win, sort of thing. Do you think Sting matured more and learned more and became a better long-term player based on 1990 or 1991?
Well, I think 1990, he had time to sit back and look at some things. Steve Borden's a smart guy, but the pro wrestling business has so many different nuances that sometimes they're not just automatically absorbed. You got to experience them. You got to understand them. And you got to have people around you that can help you with those philosophies and things of that nature. So I think the time that he was off with injury and between runs, shall we say, was where he got to put a lot of thoughts together. And you could tell when he's being worked and when he wasn't. He was that naive kid, again, as I said earlier, that was going to be such a positive influence in the locker room and a good-natured human being that those days were gone. I got to have better reasons. I got to know more about it. I got more knowledge about it. And by the way, what if we do this? So, we mentioned earlier tonight or today that this Sunday night Sting's in a match on a pay-per-view. And it's going to be a full house there in Orlando. A long way from that 400 he had in Greensboro.
A long way.
Yeah, man. But he learned over the years, and in that match on Sunday, and again, like all the matches, I purposely run from any inside information that I don't need to. I need to react and not analyze, not precondition myself. You'll see how he uses his abilities. What is he, 62 or 3?
Something he's like early 60s. Yeah.
And whatever he does will be exactly what he needs to do for a early 60-year-old guy. He's just got it down now. He may be more actually, Conrad, more effective in some ways from an emotional standpoint than he was when he was younger. Because he's not on TV every week anymore. Tony Khan's booked him to where he's kept him special. And there's where your money is. And people now, I just, y'all came back to me here a few weeks ago. Some dads are bringing their kids to AEW matches when they know Sting's there because Sting was their guy. And now they're taking their son to see the dad's former favorite or longtime favorite. It's just a different feel. It's a different emotional feel. And Sting plays that up exactly as he should. He's very fan friendly and he's not going to do anything in a ring that he can't execute to a non-embarrassing level. Not going to happen.
In hindsight, I guess Sting's probably the last survivor from the NWA to WCW transition, is he not? As far as an in-ring guy, he's got to be one of them.
Yeah,
top guy. I mean, Flair's out, Luger's out. Feels like he's one of the last big names.
No, you're right. Yeah, as far as somebody we're forgetting, but nonetheless, he's certainly the most prominent last name of that era. And but he's just he's pretty much an extraordinary performer when you stop and think about it. All the hardships that he went through that we discussed, and the injury, the patella injury, for example, the booking changes, the booking philosophy changes, And he was just like, I'm sure he felt like a pawn in a chess game. And it couldn't have been much fun for him. But he endured. And for a guy to come on the scene, Conrad, in 91 and have those highly ranked matches and rated matches on television that year, pretty damn good. Because Meltzer wasn't giving off 5 stars to WCW performances.
No,
or
sir.
4 stars, right?
No, sir.
And probably and deservingly. We weren't doing a lot to write home about.
No.
But Sting still held his head up, and he performed, and he made the matches he was in better, I thought. So he's been Sting's been a great gift to our business. And when Tony Khan signed him, I thought, well, he's going to sign him for a 1 off or 2 off, get to a pay-per-view, try to pop a number. All of a sudden, he's a semi-regular. But he's been booked right. He's not overused, overexposed, and he's not put into predicaments that he cannot execute. And here's the other thing. I'll give Tony Khan a lot of credit because that's what ass kissers do. I'm an ass kisser. So, but I'm sure he's deeply involved in his own creative. Deeply involved. And the other guy that's helping over the long haul is Darby Allin. Because Darby and Sting are interlocked to TV. And I'm sure there's little meetings and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, whatever. I'd like to try this. What do you think of this idea? It's nothing but beautiful for Darby. And he eats it up. He's a student of the game. So there's a lot of wins on Sting's agenda right now. And I'm just glad that, for me, Sunday, because when you get older, you don't know tomorrow's not guaranteed. We know that. So I don't know when we'll see Sting again on pay-per-view. I don't know when I'm going to see myself again on pay-per-view. At this stage of life, you just take it a day at a time, or a week at a time, a TV show at a time. But I'm really excited about that. That's one of the matches that got me pumped up. Because I believe I owe it to him to give him my absolute very, very best. I've known him since the Mid-South days. And I owe it to him to do that. And everybody involved owes it to him. Excalibur, Tony. Tony can say, Sting! We should just record that. Sting! I love that. So, but anyway, it'll be fun, Conrad. Special show. Special show. Performers have egos. You know that?
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah, it's fact. All performers have egos. And the egos will lead you into seeing, I remember Eddie Guerrero telling somebody, follow that, you motherfucker. But they got that mentality. Why would you want to go on a show and not be the best on it? And so I think there's a lot of guys in this card that you think Ryan Danielson and John Moxley don't want to have the best match on the show.
Of course.
But all those top guys like that do. They want to walk away from that. They're as enamored by Meltzer's star ratings as anybody else reading it. They might admit that in public, but they are. And the match of the night or whatever, the MOTH match of the year or whatever the hell is, all that shit. I need a young kid to hang around me and tell me what these initials mean.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. If it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at savewithconrad.com. Well, you know what 3 of them are. BBQ. JR'sBBQ.com is where you need to go.
Yeah, baby.
Whether you live in Florida, Alabama, or Timbuktu, it's grilling season, baby. And JR's all-purpose seasoning makes everything taste better. And of course, he's got main event mustard and Chipotle ketchup, and he's got the sauce. And man, you got something for everybody over there on the site. Do you know it?
We try. We sure try. As you would say, there's a lot to unpack here, Conrad.
Yes, sir.
I love these. I get pictures on social, on Twitter at JRSBBQ. the very varying ways that people use our product. And interesting came, we all got, you ever make scrambled eggs? Did you make yourself some scrambled eggs
Yes, sir.
from time to time? Well, we all got, I'll put chives in it. I'll put a little red pepper flakes. We all got our little quirks that we use in our season or in our eggs. Some people put a little bit of milk, or a little bit of cream, or a little bit of butter. All these good things. Well, this guy showed me a picture of him cooking with making scrambled eggs, and the primary seasoning was JR's all-purpose seasoning with scrambled eggs, and it looked great. So I enjoy those pictures. A lot of things you can use it with, and like you said, in our lives and the way we were raised, it's never not grilling season. And guys like us that are trying to watch our weight and eat a little healthier, grilling is the way to go.
Yeah.
My daughter got me an air fryer for Christmas the year before last, and I have never used it because I don't know how to turn it on. But I damn sure I turn on my grill. And I'm going back to Oklahoma for a couple of 3 weeks because we got shows in Texas coming up. So I'll stay in Oklahoma for some of those times and re-familiar with my home there. But I got an outdoor kitchen, brother. You know that. You've seen it.
Yep.
And I'll use that son of a gun almost every day. And it's a good way to have my friends over and my cigar smoking buddies. Please don't stink up my house too bad. And so there's a lot of fun things about that product that we're loving promoting. And I know people get probably tired of my bullshit about it, but I believe in what we're selling. I truly believe that we make a very good product. It's not a vanity product that I'm selling to see my fat face on a label of a mustard can. So all good, man. I appreciate everybody's support. And sometimes we got people going there just buying 1 or 2 bottles of sauce. Then we got people coming and buying a case. Or we got sales managers giving the product for their accomplishments from their sales department. It's so many fun things we're involved in. And Stephen Link is there, and he tries, if there's something you want, and you can contact him on our site, then at jrsbbq.com, I'd wholeheartedly suggest if you need a case of sauce and you want a deal somehow or another, we'll deal with you. We'll deal with you because I want that product in your house because I feel very confident that once you try it,
you're going to love it.
You'll love it. You're going to be back.
Check it out. It's jrsbbq.com. And be sure to check us out next week. We're talking Stone Cold Steve Austin's 1997, the beginning of his babyface rise. Of course, the now infamous double turn with Brett, the whole American Canadian thing, Owen, the injury, the recovery, Stone Cold stunning Steve Austin or Vince McMahon and MSG, and then getting back into the ring. A lot to talk about for Stone Cold in 1997, is it not?
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. It brings back great memories to a more explosive and unpredictable time in pro wrestling. There's nothing better. There are a lot of things that's good, perhaps you can make an argument for, but really, week in, week out, year in, year out, there's nothing better than surprises. Good surprises.
Speaking of surprises, Jim, I don't know if you saw, but we had a big surprise. We've got a super show coming up on April 1st, WrestleMania weekend. Myself, Jeff Jarrett, and Eric Bischoff, and we teased who's the third man. And I'll tell you, about every other name that I saw suggested or guessing was Tony Schiavone or Jim Ross. It wound up being Jeff Hardy. Can you believe we got Jeff Hardy, dude?
Oh, it's cool, man. He'll be a very good guest. He's got a great story to tell.
Yep.
You might even break some news there. Never know. Never know. I think Jeff Hardy's coming to AEW. I don't want to say it's the best kept non-secret or whatever I'm trying to say. I mean, to have the Hardys here together for their last major tag team run is a booker's dream. And I think because the Young Bucks idolized the Hardys forever, to have that opportunity at some point in time is a match that I would, if I was retired, I'd want to come out of retirement and call that one. So it's good. But I can tell you this, I don't know if I'm supposed to be this excited, Conrad, honestly. I can't wait till Sunday night. It's a car trip. It's a lot of these high alpha male types looking to steal the show. They're going to lay their shit in. I think there'll be some surprises on it. And it's damn sure the time you'll invest to join your friends around the TV and watch it on paper.
It's going to be awesome. Check it out. It's this Sunday. Of course, JR is going to be on the call. He'll be on the air next Wednesday for all things AEW on TBS. But then he and I will be back next Thursday talking Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1997 right here on Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Conrad, great job as always. You're amazing. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you, and you'll hear me hopefully Sunday night when we open a real can of whoop ass, speaking of Stone Cold, at Revolution. Going to be a great show. Hope you tune in. I think when we talk about it after the fact, obviously, like next week, it will be something you'll say, they didn't overhype that one. It lived up to the billing. So we'll see you Sunday night. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.